Hello everyone, welcome to the Lucasfilm Publishing Panel. My name is, yes, thank you. My name is Michael Siglain. I'm the Creative Director of Publishing at Lucasfilm. I am honored to be joined by some of the best writers in the biz today. Down the line we have Mr. Ben Blacker, Christian Blauvelt, Mr. Cullen Bunn, Ms. Christie Golden, Claudia Gray, Mr. Jarrett Krosoczka. Thank you, I practiced. Beth Revis. And then rounding out the group we have Cavan Scott. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Landry Walker. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some of the exciting new things we've got coming up for Star Wars publishing. We may have a surprise or two in store. We may have a reveal or two in store. We will not be telling you guys what happens in episode 8. So if that's why you're here, you know, tough break. So we've got some good stuff lined up. What I wanted to do first is talk to these fine folks and go down the line so that they can each tell you a little bit about the books that they're working on right now. So starting with Ben. Ben, you've been doing the Join the Resistance middle grade series right now. Can you tell the folks a little bit about that and you know, what they should know about that book?
Sure. Join the Resistance is as Mike said, a middle grade book that I've written with my writing partner, Ben Acker. And it's about a bunch of kids who join the resistance against the First Order. It takes place just before Force Awakens. And the first book is now out. It is currently available. And the second book should be out this year?
Yeah, October, right? Can you reveal anything little about the second book that's not
I can say this.
Okay, go right ahead.
Something happens at the end of the first book, and you've all read it, I assume. So I can say the kids find themselves caught by the First Order, by a bunch of stormtroopers. And the second book, I'll take you behind the scenes, which is we started writing it in January, and the Trump inauguration was coming up, and it's dark. It's a dark book. In fact, so much so that our terrific editors sent us a note and said, hey, don't forget that this is for middle grade readers and should be kind of funny. Here are some places it might be funny. And so we're really happy with the book, really thanks to these editors.
And the book is really sort of a Goonies meets Star Wars type.
Yeah, I mean, we hope we capture the fun of, you know, what it is like to be a kid experiencing the Star Wars movies as we were, that these kids are experiencing the Star Wars universe in this sort of exciting and fun way.
Awesome, thank you, thank you. Christian, you're new to the Star Wars universe. You want to tell folks a little bit about what you're working on?
Yeah, this is my first...
Be careful what you say.
Of course. Oh, no, I know. That's like one of the first rules of working with Lucasfilm. Yeah, I'm so excited. This is my first Star Wars book. It's called Star Wars Made Easy, and it is designed for newbies to the Star Wars galaxy. You know, if you don't know a Jawa from a Jedi, this book is for you. Now, of course, all of you here are Star Wars diehards, right? But, yeah. But, you know people in your lives who have never seen Star Wars, or, you know, just really, it's not been a part of their lives. Like when I was growing up in the 90s, like my parents weren't into Star Wars, none of my friends at school were into Star Wars. I like went it alone. I was
Christian, you gotta scrape those people off.
I know, exactly, just pick them off. And so it was like, for me, you know, I wish I had this book just like to connect with, you know, the fandom that I knew was out there, and to learn more about different things that were going on, because I had no one to talk to about any of this, you know, about like how does hyperspace work, you know, how does a lightsaber work, what is a Jedi, you know, and just go into all of this in depth. I mean, the movies do such a great job of just dropping you into that universe, and really keeping the exposition to a minimum, which I think is amazing. But you know, as diehard fans, you love to know more about it, like all the little secrets about everything that's happening. So it's a great book for, you know, for people in your lives who are not Star Wars fans and you want to get them up to speed. Give this book to them, and they'll see what all the fuss is about.
Yeah, this is really a Star Wars 101 or a Star Wars for dummies. But it's essential for a lot of people who are near and dear to our hearts. Cullen, for you, right on, look at that. Now you're official, Ben.
These guys know who I am.
Pay no attention. Cullen, for you, you just finished writing Darth Maul. The last issue came out on Wednesday of this week.
Yes.
Can you tell folks a little bit about?
Yeah, so the Darth Maul series covers a period in Maul's life before the Phantom Menace, and it's sort of a deep dive into Maul's attitudes and personalities and the things that make him tick. And the thing that I find fascinating about Maul is he's been put in sort of a hurry up and wait scenario. It's been drilled into his head that the Jedi are the enemy. He's been trained to kill Jedi, but Sidious has told him, but not yet. And if you've all seen Phantom Menace. The scene that sticks out in my mind is when those shields are coming down in the hall, when he's facing Qui-Gon, and he's just pacing back and forth. And that struck me right from the beginning, that he's not a patient person. I mean, he's seething inside, ready to fight Jedi. And in this series, he kind of gets his chance. He finds out about some Jedi that he may be able to secretly go out and take out, but he has to make sure Sidious doesn't know. And so this is sort of it's a little bit of a heist story with Maul trying to find these Jedi and work secretly. It's a little bit of a dangerous game story with Maul fighting tons of different bounty hunters, and it's definitely it's kind of a tragic story, I feel like, and you get to see Maul, and it's definitely a book where we're not portraying Maul as a hero or anything. It's Maul, and he's a villain. He's a mean dude.
Thank you, Christie. You've got Inferno Squad coming up. Can you shed a little light for these fine folks on Inferno Squad?
Inferno Squad is a prequel to the Battlefront II game that is coming out by the same name in November. And this has been a really amazing experience for me. I was brought in before some of the casting had even been settled, and the actress who plays the main character of Iden Versio reached out to me, kind of tracked me down and reached out to me because she wanted to learn more about the backstory of her character when she found out there was a prequel. So I've had a wonderful experience getting to know her. The author of the script for the game is obviously somebody who I respect, and I want to do a good job with the characters that have been entrusted to me. And he's really been very, very supportive. The basic storyline is this is where we meet the main characters that we're going to be playing in the game. It's 4 years beforehand. Some of them don't even know each other, and they're put together, and they go on we see them on their first missions, and some of them do not go according to plan. And then after they get their feet wet a bit, they're sent against the toughest people out there, the angriest, the harshest, the most violent, the least scrupulous of the rebels. And that is the remnants of Saw Gerrera's partisans. And there's only a handful of them, and they're going to make every one of their lives count. So you get to see characters from the Empire, traditional baddies, up against people from the Rebellion, traditional goodies, and you're going to see that neither of them is actually what you thought.
Very cool. Thank you, Christie. Claudia, you're up next. You've got a little book coming out in September.
Yes, I do.
Can you
Fancy
tell us
that.
fine folks a little bit about it?
Okay, the title is Leia, Princess of Alderaan, and as you may have deduced, it is about Princess Leia. It is set, it's her origin story in the rebellion. How did she first become a part of this organization? Because when we see her for the first time, well, I was going to say in A New Hope, but now in Rogue One, she's already a leader. She's already somebody who's important to this organization, and she's 19. And I think that tells you that she did not start small. So yeah, this is how she goes there. What are some other things? I'm trying to figure out what I can and can't tell you, lest like the drop ceiling, you know, come open and the Lucasfilm like drop down on cables. Let's see. Well, one thing, I don't think it's giving away too much to say that when Leia is very young like this, she is with her parents a lot, and there's a lot of Bail and Brea in this book. And while this is very much Leia's story, I do feel like there are some scenes and chapters that are also like a Bail and Brea Organa story told through their daughter's eyes, and that we get to see a little bit more of them and of Alderaan. It was really interesting to me to put this sort of in the context, like one of the things I loved about Rogue One was seeing that very early stage of the rebellion when nobody really agrees on what they're doing and it's still a very tenuous set. This is set before Rogue One, so you know, I'm not going to say anything, but I think you can deduce that there's going to be some interesting cross currents there.
Awesome.
Are there other things I can say?
No, that's good. You're good.
That's all.
So let's
we're fine. We're fine.
Let's move from YA back to middle grade. Jarrett, can you tell us a little bit about Jedi Academy and what we're up to with those books?
Sure thing. So the Jedi Academy books they're middle grade. They're silly. You know, they take place about 100 years before the events of Phantom Menace. So they're sort of silly in that there's like the characters use a social media called Stargram to like communicate with each other and post photos, or you know, I created this character named Victor Starspeeder, and that was for me the most exciting part about being invited to create new stories in the Jedi Academy series, is that I was being invited because I write and illustrate a series of graphic novels about a lunch lady who fights crime. And so I got to invent Victor and also just sort of like what my version of Jedi Academy would be. So Victor's very hyperactive, and Yoda is trying to help him channel that energy, so he has him join the drama club. So it's like the kids in drama club, but you know, set at the Jedi Temple. But I'm also infusing, silly as they are though, I also infusing like real world problems that kids today would be able to identify with, dealing with their friends and worrying about their social standing, and also dealing with classes, but their classes are, you know, learning how to use a lightsaber and learning how to use the Force. And I also illustrate these books. And so I spend just hours in my studio listening to the John Williams score while drawing these pictures, and it's just been such a thrill, and it's so much fun. So, and the Force Oversleeps will publish on Tuesday.
Awesome, thank you. We're going to go back to YA now with Beth. Beth, can you tell us a little bit about Rebel Rising for those who haven't read it yet?
Yeah, absolutely, although you should all read it. So if you've seen the movie Rogue One, and you know there's a moment where Jyn goes to hide in the hatch after her parents are faced with the Empire, and Saw comes, and then there's like a black screen, and it flashes forward to Jyn in prison. My book is that black flash of screen. It picks up immediately when Saw opens up the hatch and says, "You need to come with me," and it shows you exactly how she got to prison and what that prison experience for her was like.
Awesome, thank you. And then
I just want to add one quick thing.
Sure.
I really enjoyed Rebel Rising, and you will see a character from Beth's book. You'll see a character from Beth's book in Inferno Squad. I didn't know that.
we'll give you a minute, it's all right. On the end, both Cav and Landry, I was hoping you guys could talk a little bit about Star Wars Adventures and what that is, considering that hasn't come out yet.
No, well, Star Wars Adventures is out in September. This is the Ashcan, which is available on the IDW's booth. It's an all-age comic for Star Wars fans and for kids. And for me, it's really important because I'm, as you might tell from my accent, a Brit. Over in the UK, I didn't see Star Wars in the cinema, but my introduction to Star Wars was the Marvel UK Weekly, Star Wars Weekly, when they took the American editions and split them into sort of 10 pages and things. And so for me, Star Wars was a comic before it was a film, and then I saw Empire Strikes Back. So that was my entry point, and I think for a lot of, you know, comic fans, I'm assuming there's a few comic fans in the room today. And most of us, you know, probably started reading when we were kids, and I think it's really important to have a Star Wars comic that's aimed at 9, 10, 11-year-olds and tell stories for them so they can own that part of Star Wars.
Yeah, I think a key thing here with the approach of this is making sure we hit something that's really, truly all ages, something you can give a 5-year-old, something you can give a 15-year-old, something you could give to a 50-year-old, because that's what Star Wars in the theaters really is something for all ages. And it's been already just a tremendous pleasure to work on, and I wish there was more we could say about it.
Say about Derek, working with Derek.
Yeah, working with and Eric Jones as well. This artist, has anyone been by the IDW booth to pick up a copy of this yet? Oh, you all have a lot of work to do then. Go by the IDW booth and pick up a copy. It's got amazing art by Derek Charm. And I believe you're doing the first two?
Yeah, so I'm doing the first two, which is a Rey story before she meets BB-8, and you get to explore again. It's that thing, Star Wars, you get dropped into the world, and Nina Outpost, you know there are stories there. You know these people know each other. And also it gives you know, what I love about Star Wars, you see Boba Joe wandering in the background, you go, well, what are they like? You know, and you get to drop them in. So we've got that as the main story, the A story, and then there's a backup story because it's going to be a revolving team of creators, a revolving team of eras. So we start with Rey, we've got a Finn story coming up, and then in the background we've got the backup story in issue 1 is from the prequels. So you know, it's introducing kids to all aspects of Star Wars.
Yeah, we get to play with every era, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do, and really examine how it all interconnects.
Yeah.
The beauty with Star Wars Adventures is that, you know, you can tell smaller stories that do focus on some of the bigger characters, whereas with, you know, something that, let's say, Cullen's working on with Marvel, it's a more intricate story. It is meant for an older audience. Star Wars Adventures really is meant for kids, you know, so you can, it's sort of the gateway in, even to reading, much like with what, Jarrett, you're doing. For reluctant readers, whether it's Star Wars Adventures or Jedi Academy, it's a great way to get them interested in Star Wars, or to, you know, relive the movies or take a piece of the movies home with them. So yeah, we're very excited for Star Wars Adventures. It comes out in September of this year. So those are the basics with what everyone is working on. I wanted to quickly touch base on the 40th anniversary, because obviously this is the 40th anniversary year, 40th anniversary of A New Hope. For you guys on the panel, and Cav, you touched on this briefly, what was your first experience and introduction to Star Wars? Ben, you're up. Go.
My first introduction to Star Wars?
It was right before you started writing the book, right? That was
yeah, I had to catch up. I'm more of an Alien versus Predator kind of guy. No, I remember going to see Empire Strikes Back with my dad when I was a child, and we arrived to the theater late, and we had to sit in the aisle, and we had to sit sort of up close. So my first experience with Darth Vader was him just looming over me, just absolutely enormous, and it made a huge impression. And he's been my favorite character since, until Episode 7, which is the best Star Wars movie. Controversial. Rey, Finn, those guys are the best. Sorry, everybody.
Christian, how about you?
You know, so for me, it was, you know, I said that no one in my life was really into Star Wars growing up, but there was one kid down the street from where I lived who, I wouldn't say he was a super fan, but he had this copy around 1995, 1996 of Shane Johnson's Star Wars: The Technical Manual, which was actually published by Del Rey at the time, and I just loved this. I'd never seen any of the movies, but I just poured over this and just ate it up. And the other thing was that, you know, I was a kid growing up in Florida. I lived just like 90 minutes from Disney World. So for me, like the first actual bit of Star Wars video content I saw was Star Tours. And and I loved that. It was such a cool, immersive experience. It was a way of just like jumping feet first into the Star Wars galaxy. So I was only like, it was a couple days before my 10th birthday when I finally saw A New Hope on VHS. And I was kind of amazed, like, oh wow, why isn't the Starspeeder 1000 in this film?
Is Star Tours canon? Yes. These guys know better than you know. Can we do a Star Tours book?
No.
Colin, how about you?
So, if you can't tell from my accent, I grew up in the country. And we didn't have a movie theater close when Star Wars came out. But I remember my parents giving me, it was either a birthday or it might have been Easter. Easter seems right. I got like 4 Star Wars figures for that event, and knowing nothing of the movie, but I started playing with those figures, and I remember vividly putting them in the little plastic blister pack shell and making it was like an invisible plane. I was flying them around and just making up Star Wars stories.
What were the figures?
I know that I got a Stormtrooper, I know I got C-3PO, and I know I got Vader, and I want to say one was Han when he had the figure had a weird face the first time, but I remember playing with them in the yard, and then the movie left the theaters, and then came back just I don't know, a month or 2 later, it came back to the theaters, and my dad was too busy to take me, so one of his employees took me to see Star Wars. But then after that, I was all in, and I was the kid who my dad would pick me up and out of school early when the new movies came, when Empire came out, and when Return came out. My dad picked me up from school so we could go see the movies, and but yeah, I didn't see it initially. But in that era, movies would come back if they were popular enough. So I saw it whenever the second run was.
Awesome. Christie, how about you?
I was 13 when Star Wars first came out in the summer of '77, and I remember the first time I saw it, and I walked out of the theater like almost in a daze because I had just seen something, and there are these moments in life that shape you, and that was one of them. And I am just a teensy tiny bit obsessive about things that I like. And so for the rest of that summer, my parents, God bless them, who are not science fiction fans, who are not into anything that I'm into, my parents would drop me off for the first showing on Saturday, pick me up for dinner. I'd sit and watch it like 3 times. And then I'd go Sunday and do the same thing. And then guess what I did the next weekend? And the weekend after that, all through that summer. So I have people say, oh, you must have seen Star Wars how many times? I have really no idea, really no idea. But when my father passed away a few years ago, but he did live long enough to see me make the New York Times bestseller list. And to see that I was writing Star Wars. And my dedication is to them, and I was like, you see? All those weekends you dropped me at the movie theater, they've paid off. So that's my first introduction to Star Wars.
Yeah, I've told my parents, I was like, you thought it was daydreaming. It was career preparation.
Absolutely.
How about you, Claudia?
I was 7 when A New Hope came out, and I've told this story before, but it's true. Seeing that movie at that age, I think, permanently severed my brief and never strong connection to reality. It's just, forget it, reality is boring. This is what's interesting. And for the rest of my life, have been interested in science fiction and fantasy and, and Star Wars itself. And I mean, between my brother and me, we got so many of the action figures together. I made my closet, there was a walk-in closet that I had, I made it into an X-Wing simulator by which I, crayoned little TIE fighters and spaceships and whatever and taped them up around the walls. And there was no helmet, but somehow there was a cowboy hat in the house, and I decided that would do. So please imagine this very tiny girl with this cowboy hat too big for her, like pretending to shoot at crayon TIE fighters. And let's see, I do remember my brother and I, we lived very near a river, and we very nearly flooded one time. They sandbagged about 3 feet from our house, and it held. But what was left over nearby were these enormous piles of sand. I mean, Volkswagen-sized piles of sand. And we were like, that's Tatooine. And it takes years for those to go away. So we played and we did all that, and we always had them out there, and the piles would slowly get smaller and smaller. But we had moved away. I think I was out of college and my brother was in college when somebody finally came to sort of develop that land. Anyway, one of the workmen came over to my parents' house, and there was a little rebel soldier. He'd been on a really long tour of duty. But she brought him in and cleaned him up, and so now he's at the house.
He thought the war was still going on.
He's on shore leave, finally.
Sad story.
Jared?
My introduction to Star Wars were the arcade games, hence my t-shirt today, and C-3PO cereal, and the little droid action figures. But also celebrating its 40th anniversary this year is me, a couple months. And so I was raised with my grandparents, and I remember we went to go see E.T., and I left the theater in tears because I was afraid of E.T. So like a year later when Return of the Jedi came out, they were like, okay, we're not going to go through this again with this kid. He's scared of movies and all that stuff. So I didn't experience the movies until I got to I remember my first week of college, my friend Sean was like, what do you mean you haven't actually seen the movies? So we sat down and watched, we had one of those like TV VCR combos in the dorm, and we watched the original trilogy. And so I named one of the teachers after my friend Sean in the Jedi Academy books. And also, going back on what you're saying, so I also write the Jedi Academy books, which are half journal entries and half graphic novels, thinking about those kids who might not be ready for yet, the big special effects and those scary moments. So I'm writing these books for the sort of Star Wars kid that I was when I was little.
Oh, that's sweet.
Anything with C-3POs, is that going to make a comeback? Cereal, C-3POs, like the actual?
Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath for the C-3PO cereal.
Traces of 4 vitamins.
So I'm not just country, I'm Southern Appalachian, y'all. And I was born after the movies were on the big screen. So my introduction to them were through VHS tapes, but not VHS tapes that were like real. They were the ones that my mom taped off of the television. And all the commercials were still there. And to this day, when I watch Return of the Jedi, which we literally wore that VHS tape out, I know where the commercial breaks happen. Wait a minute, yeah, there was a Domino's ad right there. There was a Noid. So I have strong associations with the commercials with Star Wars. But my happiest memories of my childhood were playing Darth Vader and Princess Leia with my brother, whose name was Luke, but he was definitely a Vader. We had a lightsaber that was literally just a PVC pipe that we painted red, and we just beat each other up so bad. And we would take turns. Sometimes like Princess Leia would steal it and just like wallop on Vader, and like it was a rough childhood.
So yeah, I mentioned the comics. I think actually, Cullen, you reminded me of something that I'd not thought of for a while. My gran bought me my first Kenner action figure before I really knew what Star Wars was, and it was Obi-Wan, and I was like, you've bought me an old man. Great, and also, he's tiny, because British action figures were Action Man, which were like up here somewhere, so I used to have my World War II Action Men and their granddad, who was really small. And then, I mean, when you get in that age, everything gets mixed up. I actually think before I saw Empire, my first experience of seeing them was the Muppet Show. When they all come crashing through the end, and you were scared of E.T. Chewie terrified me in that thing, and I went screaming out of the room. So it took me years to work out what happens at the end of the episode. So I think in and I think this is quite appropriate for Star Wars. They are linked to the Muppets quite a lot, and so Kermit for me is a Jedi, I think.
I grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And so my first, I was about 6 years old when Star Wars came out. So my first exposure to it, well, one more bit of information for that. My father worked for this little company called Lasermation. I don't really know what they did, except that it probably had something to do with lasers. And somehow this translated to my first exposure with Star Wars being a birthday party for one of Gary Kurtz's daughters at George Lucas's house, where Mark Hamill was there, and somebody dressed as Darth Vader that I highly doubt was David Prowse, and somebody dressed as Chewbacca. So that was interesting. They had these little glass stars that said Star Wars on them, or May the Force be with you, that I managed to still have after all these years from that. It was a very weird day. Because I didn't really have the context yet. So, and I didn't really, we're just at some friend of my dad's, friend's sort of thing, birthday party, and suddenly there's this big armored guy with a lightsaber thing. Yeah, so shortly after that I completely fell in love with the movie, and I was exactly the right age, I feel like, for that, and Empire and Return of the Jedi, waiting for each one to come out, you know, anxiously. So it's been a long journey for me on that one.
Awesome. One thing that I'm always curious about is process with writers, and you know, what do you guys do in terms of research, in terms of, do you need quiet, do you put, you know, the films on, the soundtrack on, you know, what type of research do you do? Is it just that, you know, if you guys could talk a little bit about that, because to me that's always very interesting.
I'm kind of curious to hear if everybody listens to one of the soundtracks while they write. Yes?
Yeah. I listened when I was doing
Not when I write. I can't write with soundtracks, but I plot with soundtracks. Okay. So, yeah, it's the Empire soundtrack is on loop.
When I was doing Maul, it was the one song over and over. It was Duel of the Fates over and over. It's really blasting really loud. I was getting super pumped up.
That's awesome.
I usually go and dig up covers on YouTube. I did a series of short stories for The Force Awakens. And each one was kind of this genre piece. So I found, like when I did a Constable Zuvio story, I found the Duel of Fates done by somebody just on a acoustic guitar that had this really Old West kind of vibe to it. So I try to find whatever music fits it, but I like to find like these weird cover songs.
Okay. Here's where I'm gonna sound like a total, y'all are gonna kick me out. I listened to Niall Horan's This Town on loop like 800 times. He's a One Direction guy, and so I know. But
wait, the album that just came out?
Yeah.
That I know.
Yeah. But it has a really good melody and it loops nicely.
I mix in, I've listened to things from the soundtracks, but I mix in actually a fair bit of 80s pop, because that was the decade when I was in my preteens and teens, and that was the decade when I was daydreaming about Star Wars, like an unsettling percentage of my waking hours. and sometimes those songs, they actually really sort of get me back in that spirit and in that energy. And I mean, little bits of some of those daydreams that I remember have worked their way into some of the books, which is awesome. Yeah, and every once in a while I put in another song to underline something. Like in Bloodline, I really wanted to have Leia be much more sort of dynamic and sort of push back against the idea that she's this boring person behind a desk. So I had the Ting Ting song, That's Not My Name, for anybody who's familiar with it.
Could you please make a Spotify playlist for us to all listen to?
Oh yeah, I can do that.
Before we read the book.
But yeah, just some songs that would sort of remind me, like, work against this grain or go with this.
I work best in silence because that's the only way I can hear the voices in my head. And by that I mean the voices of the characters. I do a lot of watching, of going back to the primary sources, and excuse me, so I can really kind of, I'm theater trained, so I kind of go at it like an actress in a role when I'm writing. And so I can hear, I have a real gift for getting the intonation and dialogue of a character. I pretty much nail it. And that does work best in silence. However, this last year I have written, in a 14-month period, I have done 4 novels, 3 short stories, a novella, and a video game script. And I've also gone to like about 20 billion conventions. So I have learned how to write in airports. I have learned how to write in coffee shops and turn that off. But generally, ideally, the silence is best for me. And I know I'm a little odd in that.
It's funny, when I was writing Star Wars Made Easy, I actually decided that I was going to listen to all of the Star Wars soundtracks, kind of like as an opera cycle in a way, that I would start with Episode 4, I'd start with A New Hope and Empire, and then go back and listen to all the scores for the prequels, and then listen to then listen to Rogue One, then Return of the Jedi, then The Force Awakens. And it was just like having this process. And then like when I get to the end, I'd just like start over, repeat, you know, and it was funny because like, my God, I mean, each of these scores has such a distinct character and really, I mean, I found to be so deeply motivating. I mean, Michael Giacchino's score for Rogue One, unbelievable. I mean, just that bit when the cargo shuttle is about to land on Scarif, like every time I would get so psyched just writing my book. I was like, all right, I'm gonna get like an extra page out right now. You know? But yeah, and I mean, of course, every now and then a little bit of the Mako disco Star Wars as well, which is amazing. But yeah, no, it's funny. The music was very important to just like get me psyched.
And you know, going back on what you were saying about like writing in hotel rooms or airports, and I do the same thing. I have 3 kids at home, so when I'm traveling, I try to make the most of my time. But when it hadn't been announced yet that I was writing new stories for the Jedi Academy books, and I was sketching out cover ideas while I was on a flight, and the person next to me kept looking, I'm like, I'm just a fan, and it's just fan art, and I'm going to put this away and then not do this on an airplane anymore. Just in case. Just in case.
Can I ask a question? Claudia's statement suggested to me a question, which is like, for so many of us, Star Wars is steeped in so much nostalgia, you know, and we were talking about how most of us discovered this as young children. So when you're writing your stories, do you keep in mind your audience? Are you writing it as your adult self? Are you putting yourself back into your 10-year-old brain? Is it some amalgam of all of these things?
With writing the kids stuff, I definitely have to, you know. Before working on Star Wars Adventures, I was one of the 2 writers on a series called Adventures in Wild Space, which is all out in the UK and is coming out in the States, which is set 16 years before Rebels. The protagonists are two children who are sort of lost in space. So yeah, you definitely have to. There was one, we have an Imperial captain called Captain Corder in that, and I love him because he is well, he's not a nice man. And there was one moment when I wrote a line which was pure evil, then I realized that 9-year-olds were going to have to read this. And the line was, "You remind me so much of your mother, you scream just like her." And I love that line, and that is who Corder is. And it can never be in those books. So I now need to write an adult version of Corder so we can get his sadistic nature. But yeah, you have to do it. How I do it as well is I do get the toys back out, and there's a scene in the second Adventures in Wild Space where you have a boat chase with a boat being chased by a TIE fighter through like a Venetian canals. And to do that, I got out my TIE fighter, I got out my James Bond Live and Let Die boat, and my wife walked into the study very nicely with a coffee to find me going, pew, 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 pew. Right? Pew, 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 pew. And she just put the coffee down, shook her head and walked back out again. It's just like, she gets that a lot.
Speaking of dialogue, very quickly, do you guys have a favorite line of dialogue that you've written in any of your books?
It's not dialogue, but it's a line of narration where Jyn has met a character named Hatter, and he says something very suggestive, and her response is one I quite like. So I won't spoil it for you, but you gotta read the book.
I can say, and this is about the book that's coming out in October, our second book, we started writing it the day after Carrie Fisher died. Yeah, I told you it's a dark book. But that first, it really gave us a jumping off point for the book, and there's a passage in the first chapter right at the very beginning that we're very proud of, which is our main character, who's a 15-year-old kid who joined the Resistance, thinking about Princess Leia, thinking about General Leia. And what she meant to him, and her strength and her humor in the face of all the things that she was faced with. And we're very happy with that passage.
Awesome. Anyone else?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind for me is actually one of Tarkin's lines in Lost Stars, because as far as Thane and Cyan are concerned, at any point in the book, Tarkin was great. They think he's awesome because their memory of him is this guy who let them get on an Imperial shuttle and told them they could be anything they wanted to be when they grew up. But of course, you're reading this with different perspective than these 7-year-olds. And when the children are playing, he says, "You see, we must never hesitate to use the lash when necessary, but sometimes the lure is more effective." I felt like it sort of showed, like, yeah, he's not viciously cruel the whole time, but that doesn't mean he isn't manipulating and thinking ahead the whole time. But they never catch that. They never will.
There's a line in Inferno Squad, and because it's so new, I can't spoil it for you. It's not a dialogue, but I will say that one of the things I got to do was introduce Aiden's homeworld of Vardos. And it was pretty cool to do that, I mean, it's a brand new world. And they have these trees, these beautiful, this was in the game, and I was really drawn by that. And they had these trees with this white bark and red leaves, and the leaves drop into water, and the color leaches out of them. So there's this trail of red spreading through the water. And this was something that was in game, and I just was really gripped by this. So there's a reference to those in the first part, and in the second part, after all that's happened, there's a couple of lines involving some of that, and I'm really super proud of it, and it made Janina cry. So I know it was good.
It's tough for me because every line in Darth Maul is so well crafted, but it's funny to me, sitting here, I can't think of, there's not a lot of them I'm thinking of that jump out, but there's some of the simple lines really resonate with me, and it feels like what speaks to Maul. And there's a line in the final issue where someone says to Maul, "May the Force be with you," and Maul's response is, "I'm Sith. The Force is always with me." And there's something about that I really, I love that line, even though it was a super simple line. And
that's awesome.
Since we went a little darker, one of my other favorites was when Sajer is talking to Jin, and he says, when it mattered, the Jedi couldn't hold on. And it was a reference, if you've seen the Clone Wars animation and know the fate of Saw's sister Steela, that for him the Jedi were not powerful enough.
So for me, when I was writing Star Wars Made Easy, I was trying to get myself into the headspace of someone who is just seeing Star Wars for the first time. So it was exciting for me as such a long-time fan to actually see Star Wars kind of like through fresh eyes in a way, through the eyes of someone who's just seeing it for the first time. So when writing like little plot summaries that we have throughout the book, which are heavily illustrated and have fun character icons and everything, I was trying to come up with like the most simple ways to describe certain story points. So in Attack of the Clones, for instance, I just ended up summing up Anakin's courtship of Padme throughout the whole movie just simply as Anakin selling hard, but Padme is not buying.
All right, last one, Landry, go ahead.
Yeah, in my book, the Crimson Corsair and the Lost Treasure of Count Dooku, it opened with a line in the digital version I don't think is in the print edition. It's from the Book of Hondo, a quote, "Do not wait for opportunity to strike, steal it instead."
So,
I don't have a line, but there's one illustration that I'm really psyched about. It's a double-page spread that involves them flying around and shooting asteroids.
Excellent. All right, so the reason why I was wrapping up with them quickly was I thought you guys might want to see some of the new stuff that we've got coming up. So first are some covers from IDW. The first is the issue 2 cover with Rey. We have a Luke and Leia story coming out I believe in November, which is issue 4. We have some fun stuff. I'm going to go a little quickly on this just to get to some other good stuff. I'm happy to say, right? So our friends at Marvel will be adapting Timothy Zahn's excellent Thrawn novel from Del Rey beginning next year in February. The excellent Jody Houser is adapting it. And that's just a Mace cover that, internally at the office, everyone went crazy for and loved. So we wanted to share that as well. I also wanted to quickly just highlight some of the books we've got coming up later this year. Most of these have been announced with, I believe, the exception of Tales of Hope and Courage, which is our Forces of Destiny in-world manual, where you have Miles Kanata narrating some of the stories that you've seen in the short form from our friends at Studio Fun. So a couple really fun books there. The 40th you'll hear a lot more about as we get closer to the October show at New York Comic Con. So some really good stuff. I also wanted to talk quickly about our Journey to the Last Jedi program, which, if anyone has seen the Entertainment Weekly article that Anthony Bresnikan wrote yesterday, it really does cover all of our titles. But the one that we did announce is a Canto Bight novel that's coming out on December 5th. So this is something that, you know, before you go see the film, obviously Canto Bight is one of the big planets in the film. This gives you a little taste of the film and some of the weird and crazy aliens that you'll see in there. We have our fiction program for Journey to the Last Jedi. Again, I think you guys have seen all of these, but it's still cool to see them again. There's the final cover to our Legends of Luke Skywalker book there on the left. There you go, from J.G. Jones. We have some excellent nonfiction titles as well, which again, I believe you guys have seen most of these, though the Katie Cook Keepsake coloring book is now the final cover with some cute little porgs in there. I also wanted to talk about our Dane Date books, which I don't believe anyone knows anything about. And you know, before we get started on them, we have the author of one of them here. So I'd like to bring him up, Mr. Kevin Shinnick, if you would be so kind.
Where are we? Here we go.
Right here, my friend. So, Kevin, if you would just tell everyone, he's an Emmy Award-winning writer, Kevin Shinnick.
Oh, yes, yes. You gotta love a special guest who they have to explain who he is even after I show up. No, I'm very excited to be here. Mike called me and said we're doing this great panel with these fantastic writers. We'd love you to come on at the end. There's just one thing you can't do. I said, what? He said, talk about the book. I said, all right. But I think we do have, how much can I say about it?
You can't say anything.
I can't say anything about it. What I can I'll tell the genus of it a little bit.
Okay.
Which is,
don't give anything away.
No. Unless people don't know I have a daughter. I have a 6-year-old daughter. Mike has 2 daughters around the same age, and like everybody we talked about, I'm just so primed for her to love Star Wars, and she almost already does, having seen nothing, just me talking about it, and you know, she's 6-year-old, and every now and then she'll look at me because I test her like this, and she'll say, Dantooine. They're on Dantooine. So she's so excited to get it, but she's also a little nervous and a little scared, like a lot of people on the panel said when they were younger, you know, they got nervous by Darth Vader or whomever. So I thought I'd love to do sort of a book that would, that she could read, that younger generation could be introduced to Star Wars in a way that wouldn't scare them and screw my plan up for the next 30 years. And so Mike and I talked about it, and that same daughter, Mike has held hostage in the event I say too much about the book. So I'm not going to say any more. I'll let you take the lead.
You really can't say anything. You can, I guess we could reveal the main character. Is there a way to reveal the main character?
Well, you know, at first I said, can I say anything about it? He said, no. I said, there's no way. He said, well, if you could narrow down the character to one monosyllabic word, and so all I can say is,
perfect.
So we get I was practicing that for 45 minutes.
I give you one of our first day and date books, Chewie and the Porgs, which, right? Isn't that adorable? Again, we can't go into detail on what this is.
But what a cover.
Yeah, I think the cover says, oh, this is the first time you're seeing it.
It is, I love it.
It is a reveal for everyone.
Yes.
But yeah, we're super excited about this one. And again, it is for kids, whether you're, it's a parent reading to a kid or a kid who's just learning how to read.
And when do we think it's going to come out?
December 15th.
All right.
All of these
Something else big is coming out that month. Can't remember what it was. I'm sure it'll come to me.
So yeah, we're very excited about this book and about your involvement in it.
Well, thank
you
you.
want to tell them very quickly some of the other things that you've done in the past? So.
Well, you know, like everybody here, Star Wars shaped my life, and then like everybody up here, it also affected my career and gave me a career. You know, from early on, like many people, I wrote letters and poems and sent to the Star Wars fan club, hoping to be published. I'm a writer on Robot Chicken. We've done 3 Star Wars specials. That got me. Thank you very much. We have too much fun with those. All that got me a job which changed my life too, which is working on the ill-fated Star Wars Detours animated series, which got me to go up and work with George Lucas for about a month, which was mind-blowing. And I'm glad it was a month, because for the first week, whenever he spoke to me, all I heard was, womp, 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 womp. Because all I heard was, I made Star Wars, I made Star Wars, I made Star Wars. And then gradually I could hear what he was saying, and then I was able to work there. But now currently, all in the Disney Marvel family, I've created a new Spider-Man series called Marvel's Spider-Man, and that is going to premiere this month, August 19th. But if you're around on Sunday, we have a sneak preview at, I think, 10:15. So is that what you meant by what I'm working on?
That is perfect.
All right, good.
And then just to...
Yeah, I still have it. I swear to God, it's written. I have it in a folder at home.
We'll talk about that later. Just to reveal some of the other exciting books that we have coming out on December 15th, here are some of the fiction titles that we have, and we're really excited about Cobalt Squadron, which is by best-selling author and award-winning novelist Elizabeth Wein, who is a pilot herself, and this is about the bomber pilots. You can see some of the other fiction titles that we have. Our 5-minute Star Wars story, Strike Back, is the sequel to our 5-minute book from, there's a fan out there somewhere. Right on. And that has stories from the entire saga. We have some exciting nonfiction titles as well as our Art of book from Abrams. We have a visual dictionary that is so top secret from DK that we can't show you anything other than the black cover. We have a cross-sections book. You can see the skim speeder there. And then just some more nonfiction. Yes, BB-8. Wow. Yeah, there's some fun stuff here. Movie Making Magic. We've got another replica book, which is the Bomber Command, and then some construction books, sticker books, etc. So lots of fun stuff coming up. And then coming soon after that, we will have the adult novelization written by the excellent Jason Fry, and the junior novelization written by the awesome Michael Kogi, who I believe might be in the audience somewhere. There he is. So that's all the stuff that we've got coming up. Again, on behalf of everyone up here and on behalf of all of the editorial staff at Lucasfilm, thank you, because we're really lucky to do what we're doing, and it's all because of you guys. So you guys keep reading, we'll keep making books. Thank you for supporting the books. Thank you for supporting these excellent authors and for coming out today. Enjoy the rest of the con, and may the force be with you. Thanks, everybody.